Good morning, everybody. I'm Ray Moreau with the Southern Waste Information Exchange, and welcome to the Food Recovery, Diversion, and Donation webinar. We're pleased, SWIX, the Southern Waste Information Exchange, is pleased to be associated with the sponsor of the webinar, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, along with our partner in helping to organize and administer this webinar, the Florida International University. We're going to be recording this webinar for everybody and send all registrants a link to all of the program slides after this is over, probably within the next week or so. I'd just like to take a moment, and if most of you have an agenda before you, you can see we've broken down the webinar into two major sections. It's brief, but hopefully it's going to be very informative for all of you. We've got state leaders to talk about what's going on at the state level in terms of food waste management. And I will introduce those speakers in a moment. And the second part is a moderated discussion from speakers representing the hospitality industry, local school system in Florida, and a major university, Florida International University, also here in Florida. We will end the session or the webinar with a brief question and answer period. Those people that, those registrants that do not get their questions answered, your questions will be mailed directly to the speakers involved, and they will respond to you so that hopefully everybody gets their questions answered after the webinar is over. After this webinar ends, we've got a bonus session on sustainable Thanksgiving meal preparation with Chef John Massey of the Florida International University. And hopefully you can all stay and get to that particular session after ours ends. With that, let me introduce John Bushman with Florida International University Hospitality Program, and John's going to give a few introductory remarks before we get started.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Chaplain School of Hospitality and Tourism Management right here on beautiful Biscayne Bay in North Miami Beach. So we had originally planned that this be a live session right here in a state-of-the-art wine specter restaurant management lab, but pandemic said otherwise. So we come to you today by the miracle of Zoom. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things about the school here. I'm just one of 50 plus faculty members. We're delivering courses year-round to over 1,500 students, both here in Florida and at our award-winning Marriott Tianjin China program, just south of Beijing. Our students do come from all over the world to get either a bachelor's or a master's degree, and they can specialize not only in restaurant management, but of course, hotel and lodging management, events management, more about that later, entertainment management, beverage management, tourism management, and hospitality, real estate, and revenue management, and probably a few other things too. Very soon, we'll be rolling out a new degree in global sustainable tourism, but we're not quite ready to announce that yet. So I didn't announce that yet, but it's coming. So let's get into the program today then. Ray, would you like to introduce our first speaker?
Sure, John. Thank you. Our first session is called An Overview of Food Waste Management in Florida. And we have Karen Moore and Christopher Perry with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and Melanie Mason, Food Recovery Specialist with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They're going to give us a nice review of what is going on in Florida in terms of food waste management. With that, let me hand it over to Karen.
Hey, thank you, Ray, and good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Moore, and I'm the Environmental Administrator with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Waste Reduction, Recycling, and Registration Program. I'm really excited about this webinar. We have basically the dream team of food diversion in the state of Florida on this webinar today, and some great information will be shared throughout the webinar. But for me to get started, I'm going to give a brief overview of where we are with organics management in the state of Florida. And I apologize, my screen is not advancing. Let me see if I can move it. There we go. Okay, so again, just a brief overview of organics in the state of Florida. Why does it matter? What are the benefits of reducing food waste and recycling organics? Well, it reduces the amount of water used, it diverts waste from incineration and landfills, and it helps control soil erosion and phosphorus use. According to our 2019 Solid Waste and Recycling Annual Report, Florida collected 46.6 million tons of municipal solid waste. And municipal solid waste is that waste collected from our residential sector, from our commercial sector. It does not include agriculture waste and industrial waste. As you can see from this graph here, from 2018 to 2019, the overall municipal solid waste managed decreased by over 500,000 tons, or 550,000 tons. The amount landfill decreased by 800,000 tons, and recycling increased by almost 800,000 tons, resulting in a statewide overall recycling rate, which includes renewable energy, of 52%. The traditional statewide recycling rate, which excludes renewable energy, was 42%. This chart is a breakdown of Florida's municipal solid waste generated in 2019. I'd like to call attention to a few of our largest waste streams. Construction and demolition debris makes up almost 33% of our waste stream. And again, that's your building materials, your brick, your asphalt, concrete, your wood. After that, organics make up the next largest piece of the pie, roughly 18% of the waste stream. As you can see, yard waste makes up about 11%, followed by food waste, which we're talking about today at almost 7% of the waste stream. Of the 46.6 million tons of municipal solid waste generated in 2019, 3.2 million tons, roughly 7%, was food waste. And of that food waste, over 69,000 tons, a little bit over 2% of the food waste stream was recycled. Yard waste made up 18% of the municipal solid waste in 2019 with a recycling rate of 65%, or 3.4 million tons recycled. So as you can see, with organics making up such a large part of Florida's municipal solid waste stream, organics recycling is essential to advancing the state's recycling rate. So a couple things the department's doing to try to further composting and yard waste mulching in the state of Florida. We have opened up our rule, Chapter 62709. It was last updated in 2010, so it's been a little over 10 years. Some of our proposed changes, we want to do some clarification to some current definitions, address compost testing and disinfection, and address food waste composting. Food waste is a little bit vague in our current rule, so we're going to try to clarify that to really encourage more food waste composting. We do plan on publishing the draft rule 2 weeks before the workshop, and right now we're targeting the workshop sometime in December of this year. And finally, I would like to draw your attention to our Florida Organics Recycling Center for Excellence, or what we call FORCE. It's a website to promote organics recycling, and it serves as a clearinghouse of information in a statewide effort to streamline compost processing, food diversion, research, demonstration, market, and education information in Florida. The website does include a locator map to organics recycling facilities in Florida. resources for school, food donation resources, compost operating trainer modules, plastic alternatives, and much more. You can find this information at www.floridaforce.org. And with that, I am going to introduce Mr. Christopher Perry. He also works in the waste reduction recycling section for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And he will give you guys some information on what you can do to educate or use some of our information to help educate about food diversion.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be on this webinar and to quickly introduce you to a partnership that we've developed here at Florida DEP Waste Reduction and Recycling Section with the National Resources Defense Council's Save the Food campaign. The Save the Food campaign has been around for about 3 to 4 years, and it's really an exciting integrated approach at working with positive reinforcement to change behavior, because really the largest percentage of food that is wasted here in the United States as well as Florida is residential and in homes. So we really want to give, coordinators and communication specialists around the state tools to reach to their residents, and through Save the Food, they can really, drive a lot of these points home about the impacts of food waste, as well as work towards, educating residents on how to preserve food, store food, and really, work really hard on waste reduction of food. And we think that's one of the most important components. Next slide. Now, some of the components that Save the Food offers are really helpful, with waste reduction of food to really extend the life of that food, know how to store it correctly for those times when you're going to reuse that food. And through a lot of recipes that are offered on their website, you can go to savethefood.com to find these recipes. There are a lot of helpful how to use scraps, really, just make even with the holidays coming up, you're going to want to make a lot of that food last for a longer period of time. And there are a lot of helpful recipes in doing that, as well as food storage, which I talked about a little bit. The techniques for food storage are really important because, your information that they provide will really allow you to make decisions right at the point that it's critical to have this food last as long as you need it. And another really helpful point of this program is to measure those results, actually plan your events, your meals, to really, buy the right amount of food so that you don't waste it at the beginning, preparation, or end. So there's really a lot of tools. We're going to have these also available through Rethink, Reset, Recycle website, and you'll be able to, get these resources, customize them for your area, and reach to your residents. So we're really excited about being a part of this program. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to present, and you'll hear a little bit more about this program later on in the webinar. And thank you very much. Back to you, Karen.
Chris.
Yes, sir.
Chris, are you still there?
I am.
Quick question before we turn it over to Melanie. How important is positive reinforcement for recycling education?
Well, that's a great question, Ray. Thanks. Positive reinforcement for recycling education is really the driving force for changing behavior. And here at Florida DEP Waste Reduction Recycling Section, we've actually had the opportunity to partner with University of Florida as well as FSU to guide some focus groups of varying demographics to test a lot of the messaging that we've developed in our Rethink, Reset, Recycle campaign. And really, that was one of the biggest feedbacks that we received from these focus groups is the ability to change behavior is very much, I guess, expanded when you look at the ability to reach larger groups, affect that behavior change, and really make the small steps that are really required at the beginning for people to look at food a little bit differently than they would normally throughout their day. So it is an important factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Melanie, take over.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Mason, and I'm a food recovery specialist with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I'm so happy to be on this webinar with all of these wonderful people, and I'm looking forward to sharing some resources with you. So I want to start by just briefly going over a couple of key terms to make sure that we're all on the same page. Food recovery, food rescue, and food salvage are all fairly interchangeable terms. And basically, it is the idea of collecting wholesome edible food from grocery stores, farms, restaurants, really anywhere you can think of that serves food or sells food, and donating it to nonprofit food banks. One of the ways that the Department of Agriculture does that is through field gleaning. This is the act of recovering post-harvested produce from fields. It's generally done because of aesthetics. For example, the size of a cabbage might be too large for a grocery store, so they won't be able to sell that product, and we will glean it or recover it from the farm. Another one is a price drop. It may no longer be profitable to harvest that particular commodity, and again, we will go in and glean it and move that food forward to a food bank. And one of the reasons that we move this food into nonprofit food distribution agencies, these are your soup kitchens, your food pantries, and your food banks, is to fight food insecurity, which is a problem here in the United States, including in Florida. And we will discuss a few of those statistics coming up. So these are some of the terms you can expect to hear, probably not only from me, but many of our other speakers as well. So to begin, I wanted to share something from the EPA that talks about how to reduce food waste. As you can see, the top tier is source reduction. And then we have feeding hungry people, feeding animals, industrial use, and composting. Having things end up in the landfill is the very last thing that we want to do with food. So Karen spoke a little bit about the environmental impacts of food waste, which are so important, but there are also social and economic impacts to food waste. 40% of all the food we produce in the United States is wasted. We have 13 million hungry children in the United States. 1 in 6 Americans don't have access to healthy food regularly. And just like what Karen said, organic material is one of the largest components in our municipal waste stream. So there is no upside to food waste. And in fact, by combating it, we will affect many different sectors within our community. And FDACS is very committed to reducing food waste. There is legislation that states that the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services must support food recovery initiatives and help with the establishment of these initiatives. But what does all of this really mean to you? Actually, it's pretty easy. It's not that difficult to reduce food waste, which is a really good thing. So the Department of Agriculture focuses heavily on schools and farms. And there are so many wonderful things that you can do. If you are a school nutrition professional, if you work in a cafeteria, or you want to get to know the people who work in your cafeteria and talk about ways to reduce food waste, just like at what you would do with your smaller cart, just buy what you need for your schools. Market your meals. The Department of Agriculture has chefs and lots of resources to help schools market their meals to make sure that kids eat all of them, including the fruits and vegetables. We do have offer versus serve in schools. If you want to learn more about that, you can contact me, but you do not have to make students take every single thing in the lunch line. And then cutting fruit into smaller pieces for younger children has proved to be very effective in getting them to eat more fruits and vegetables. If you're a teacher or an administrator, I encourage you to do student food waste audits. This is a really fun project. I believe Elaine Fiore is going to speak a little bit more about this, but I'm also here to help provide information on any of these activities. Try to encourage respect for food. You can do that by having a school garden. Teaching children where food comes from can have a really big impact. You can also use free tracking tools. One I like to use is foodrescue.net. Visit a farm, take your kids on a gleaning field trip. Of course, that might not be able to happen until next year, but there are COVID safe precautions for gleaning. That's another thing I would be happy to discuss with you if you would like to reach out to me and talk about that. And then finally, scheduling recess before lunch is another proven way to get kids to eat more of the food that they're served. Share tables are another way that we can encourage food waste reduction. This is again going to be talked about more, but I wanted to just hit on some of the legal guidelines. Some people in Florida don't think share tables are legal. That is incorrect. The USDA promotes share table use. They promote reusing items that weren't served. And the one caveat is that you need to be in communication with your local Department of Health and make sure that you're following all your county guidelines. That's why I am here. I will help you jump through any bureaucratic hoops that may concern you. You can really contact me anytime. I do this regularly and I would be happy to help you. Another myth is that schools don't always realize they can donate food. The USDA promotes the donation of school food that it was unserved or unopened to a local food bank. Again, you need to be in communication with your local health department while doing this, but I will help guide you through any of these processes if you are interested in learning more about how to have a share table or donate school food to a food bank. Composting is also a great option. It teaches kids about a way to take food and keep it out of landfills while creating a soil amendment. You can put it on all the pretty trees around your school and hopefully you'll have more flowers than ever. The other thing we do is focus heavily on food recovery on the farm through gleaning, which we defined and discussed earlier. The name of the game for this is that I want it to be easy. My husband owns a small farm in North Florida. I know how busy it can be when you're a farmer, regardless of the size. So we have trained volunteers from gleaning organizations throughout the state who come and collect the produce. I will handle all of the logistics, the planning. I just need to know from the farmer, when do you want us to come and what do you want us to pick? I will take care of everything else. And the farmer will then get a donation receipt that they can use for a tax deduction. So the first question I always get after I give this little spiel is, will I get in trouble? And it's a bit of a myth that people who donate food are liable for some civil and criminal liability. No one in the history of the United States has ever been penalized for donating wholesome food. It's a myth. It doesn't happen. And one of the ways that you are protected, there are national laws. One of the big ones is the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act. But the state of Florida has numerous statutes that protect food donors. I put two of the most important ones on this slide. But there are numerous statutes that protect farmers, food donors, restaurants. So please don't be afraid to donate food. And then there is the carrot. If you donate food, you can deduct up to 15% of your annual income. You decide the cost of the donation. We just simply provide the pounds donated on the receipt. So this is a really big deal. It was updated in 2016 by the federal Congress. So this is across the board, not just Florida. And if you have more questions about tax incentives, again, please don't hesitate to contact me. So what I'd like to do now is encourage you to share some of this information. If you want to talk to me about implementing any of these strategies, or if you just simply have questions and you want to chat, you can reach me via email or phone, which I have here. I believe you're also getting a speakers list. So really, I absolutely love talking about this kind of thing. I can connect you with people who are doing something similar and you guys can share stories. There are so many resources available to help you if you want to reduce food waste. And I can't wait to get together and talk about this more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie. Great presentation by all of you with the FDEP in Melanie's presentation. And I'm hoping that the audience participants out there have lots of questions, and please let us know what they are, and we will get them to all of the speakers so that they get answered. Right now, we need to move along with the program and the moderated panel discussion. I will help the speakers that we have for this session with a few questions, and I'll just go ahead and introduce each of them right now. And we'll start with Joanna Behrens. Joanna is calls herself the Chief Food Rescue Enthusiast, and she's going to make some remarks about what she's involved with right now. Joanna, you set to go?
Yes, I am. I should be on, hopefully.
Great. Sounds good.
Yes. Okay. Hi, I'm Joanna Behrens, and I am indeed president of Joanna Behrens Hospitality, Inc., which is a meeting and event planning company of which I've been a member of the industry for well over 30 years, and happily volunteer Chief Food Rescue Enthusiast for the Sustainable Events Network, Florida and Caribbean. And in essence, this boils down to years and years of working in the meetings and event industry, dealing with beautiful, delicious prepared food, often watching the leftover unused food go into the kitchen in the back and saying, what happens to that food? And deciding that something needed to be done about it. So I joined forces with Sustainable Events Network back in 2016, and under the mentorship of our own Dr. John Bushman, who's our host today, along with a number of other industry professionals. In a nutshell, our committee is committed to inspiring event professionals and our vendor partners to make a plan for donating the leftover food from their events to a local charity or soup kitchen in order to hit the #2 spot on the EPA food hierarchy, which is feeding hungry people and ultimately keeping the food out of landfills. And once we get into a few questions, I'll address a few more points. But thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Joanna. Couple of questions for you. What happens to leftover food after events?
Well, all too often, the leftover food goes right back into the kitchen. One of two things could happen in a hotel scenario. And I did fail to mention in the introduction, Melanie works for Florida Department of Agriculture, which is the #1 industry in Florida, but the #2 industry is hospitality. So we've got hundreds upon hundreds of beautiful hotels that in a perfect world are hosting lots of events. And not only are these hotels outfitted to handle a particular event that's happening on that day, but they're getting ready for the next event in the next day or the next weekend. So in some instances, that leftover food will go straight to an employee cafeteria and hopefully feed hungry staff. And that is certainly a sustainable approach to handling that leftover excess food. But all too often, the chef needs the space in the refrigerator and it is going into the landfill, for lack of a better word. It's being thrown out in order to get ready for the next event. So what our organization is aiming to do is remind event planners, who are the big picture strategy makers, to make provisions for a food rescue or a food recovery as part of their plan. It's communicated to all the key stakeholders in the event execution. They've partnered with a charity or a local organization or one of the many apps that exist to assist in picking up that food and just making that plan. They have a checklist of things that they do when they're planning an event. add this to the checklist. And we're very proud. You'll see on the website, senfc.org, if you go under initiatives and move on to the box food rescue, we have not only a video of our initial inaugural food rescue that was done back in 2016, but we have both a brief as well as a more detailed event food rescue plan, which is a step-by-step instructions for anybody that would like to make this provision or their plan as they're executing an event. So they can go on there and log on. And if they have questions, there's an email opportunity as well.
Great. A follow-up question: how has event food rescue changed since COVID?
Oh, very good question. Well, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the events industry has been on a major pause for 2020. And it looks like it's going that direction in 2021, although there are events happening in a lot of instances. Right now, it's smaller events. Two key factors are coming into play with the events that are happening right now. They are on tighter budgets because basic economic reasons. The planners are being forced to do more with less money if they're even having the events, but let's hope that they are, and kudos to those who are. But of course, the bigger concern right now is, shall we say, just the safety of the food, the handling of the food, and all the hygienic aspects. So a lot of events have moved into prepackaged or boxed meals, which is actually good for food recovery. So I encourage anybody who's participating or a part of an organization that is having meetings or events in the near future, check with your event planner, find out, can those boxed meals be donated? Because more often than not, plans have been made for 100 or 200 participants, 100 show up, you've got 100 boxed meals. It is the perfect scenario for meals to be sent to a soup kitchen, to a homeless shelter. They love those box meals. So it's actually kind of the silver lining of food recovery, is that everything is hygienically packaged and much more easy to donate in those cases.
Great information, Joanna, especially in these tough COVID times. That
Yes.
Still some good news.
Yes.
On the food recovery front. With that, let's move to Elaine Fiore with the Broward County Schools. Elaine.
Hi there, everyone. Good morning. My name is Elaine Fiore, and I am an environmental educator with Broward County Schools. I'm also a food recovery champion. As I was listening to Melanie speak, I was thinking back, I've been involved. It wasn't until recently that I've been involved in food recovery, and we've all noticed it, but my awareness has developed. And I went to a Green Schools conference, I think it was in 2016, and I was listening to this woman, and she was so excited about the fact that her school started a school food recovery program, and they were recovering all this great food. And I thought, like many, I was like, oh, well, we're not allowed to do that. And she informed me of the Bill Emerson Act and also the USDA memo that Melanie mentioned. So with that information, that was vital, because I was able to go back to my district and talk about starting share table program. But we did need, like Melanie said, and I'm very grateful to Melanie, because she's the one who helped Broward County Schools get our health department policy to start the share tables. So yeah, so I do work in share tables, and then also from the work in schools. So we started expanding in Broward County, and then I made it my mission to work with Melanie in expanding share table programs throughout the state. And through that work, we've come together with our dream team that we have on our webinar, and we're working on a real special project that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Oh, John, okay, go ahead. You're on mute, Ray.
I'm sorry, gang, it was on mute. Got a
Okay.
couple of questions for you, Elaine. A
Okay.
World Wildlife Fund report estimated U.S. schools food waste totals 530,000 tons per year. Millions of dollars worth of food ends up in the garbage each day. What are some solutions to the issue of school waste, school food waste rather.
Okay, so Melanie touched on some of them, and I'm glad that she did, because it's showing that it's a priority with our government, with the Florida Department of Agriculture, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, our EPA. Everyone is on board with recovering food. So one of the best ways when it's not during a pandemic is to have share tables. And share tables are, just as Melanie mentioned, it's just a place for children to put their food that they're not going to eat. When they go through the line, they may take up to 5 food items. They have to take a minimum of 3. So a lot of times, you know, kids are fickle. They'll go through the line, they'll take something, and then they run out of time. They decide they're not going to eat it. And if the school doesn't have a share table, we're training our children to waste food. So we're training them to take unpeeled, perfectly good, unpeeled and unopened food items and treat them as trash. So share tables are a great way to reduce food waste in the schools. And there is that link there, the Florida Department of Education, Title IV, Part A. I partnered with them in developing a Florida student food access toolkit, and it has step-by-step how to start a share table program. Additionally, it has step-by-step if you want to start a school food market. And what I read, one of the questions that someone had about how do we get students on campus excited about reducing food waste. And one of the ways is just to inform them. Our students learned the food waste audit. The food waste audit is a great way to do that, because it allowed, instead of me telling the students, we are wasting a lot of food on campus, the students were actually able to experience and see for themselves all the food waste. So then they started to take ownership, and they realized, you know what, if I take this milk and I put it on the share table, number one, I'm helping to feed people who want to eat. And number two, they learned that food waste in the landfill creates methane gas, which is 30 times more potent than CO2. Could you go to the next slide, John, please? Thank you. And so Melanie touched on this, but I just want to emphasize recess before lunch is huge. Scheduling research, recess before lunch, it can reduce plate waste by 30%. Okay, if you go to the next slide. Oh, if you go back. So I wanted to talk to you about an initiative that members of our team here on the webinar are planning. We are planning our first Florida Food Waste Prevention Week. It is a consumer education campaign, and it is scheduled to take place April 5th through the 9th. And according to ReFed, is one of the largest nonprofit agencies in the nation that focuses on reducing food waste. In addition, the National Academy for Science, Medicine and Engineering, they all did research, and it was proven that consumer education campaigns are one of the best ways to change behavior. So our purpose is to raise awareness on the benefits of reducing food waste and inspiring people to take action. It saves families money, it helps to protect the environment, as we have heard, it reduces hunger, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Project Drawdown, but it has been identified as the #1 personal action to reduce carbon emissions. So we're really excited about this week. We do have planned 4 universities. Our Thursday is looking at reducing food waste at home, in schools and in the community. So we're partnering with universities throughout the state, as well as K through 12 schools, to plan activities for our students. We're in the midst of planning a hackathon for some of our university students as well. Oh, the Food Recovery Week, I'll tell you again, it's April 5th through the 9th, 2021. And would you click on the next slide for me, please, John? And we're excited about it because it's unprecedented. This is a group of people who've come together because we're passionate and we care about this issue. We have, I'm also with the Food Conservation Alliance. Right now, we have our Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Agriculture, Recycle Florida Today, Joanna's Sustainable Events Network, our EPA, and Florida Atlantic University are the core planning team for this event. And if you could click it one more time for me. And I'll leave you with this. So we're looking for partners because in order to raise awareness and inspire action, we all have to work together. So throughout the week, our partners will amplify messages from our communication toolkit. And we do have our website, the beginnings of our website are up. So you can log on to Save the Food Florida. And as a partner, you can tailor, we're going to offer you a menu of messages and you can choose the ones that fit your organization's message. And so as our partner, we're having our partners target the messaging to their internal workforce, also their professional networks, and then word will get out to the local communities. We have a photo challenge, we have a pick one pledge, there's all kinds of activities. So if you're interested, please go to savethefoodflorida.com and then you could register as a partner. And when we have our meetings, our webinars to talk about the week, we'd love for you to join us. So thank you very much. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to John.
All right, John, you're back up by popular demand.
All right, so I think there was a question for Joanna about what happens to food after events. And so I thought I would share with you a little bit about what we do at our signature event from the Chaplain School, the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. Actually originated on our campus 25 years ago and grew and grew and grew and moved to South Beach, and the rest is history. It will be operating this year in February. It will be a far reduced version of what you're used to seeing, but we will be there and we will be recovering every last bit of usable food that's left over. So there's a few pictures of my teams of students in action at the events. We work 8 of the 100-some events, the largest ones, and in a very coordinated fashion, removing food from the event tents, working with the chefs, working with the inventory people, and recovering everything we can. Again, that's every February. Just wanted to give you a picture of some of the success we've had. We started this in an organized fashion in 10 years ago in 2010. We've actually been recovering food sort of organically for a few years before that, just through our actual students came up with the idea in the beginning. They said, this is a waste, we can't do this. And on their own, they found ways to make sure some of the food from certain events that they were working was recovered. In 2010, we put together a more concerted effort with more planning. We working with Feeding South Florida. Some experts there were able to advise us on how to do it better. And certainly every year after that, we were doing better, finding more food. The festival was not growing by the leaps and bounds that you see in the bar graph. This is food that we were finding from an event that was growing, but much slower pace. What we learned around 2015 is that there's a certain point where everybody who's engaged in this activity starts to realize where the waste is. We can cut back here. We enjoy donating the leftover food, but we don't, it's costing a lot for our suppliers and everything. So they were able to find efficiencies starting in 2015. And then somewhere after that, we sort of found the how water finds its level, the right mix of how much food has to be on hand in a location like that, and what can we recover and donate. So we started working with Feeding South Florida, and then we added in Miami Rescue Mission because we found out that they serve over 1,000 meals a day there, and they were able to turn around some of this food immediately within 24 hours of our event ending. So serving to their residents who are sort of formerly homeless residents, and then also they serve the homeless guests coming in off the street. So they're serving, as again, over 1,000 meals a day there. They're able to take, for example, from our Italian night, you can see here, pasta, salad, dessert, garlic bread. All of this was recovered from a Thursday night event and served Friday for lunch at the mission. In 2012, we started a course in corporate social responsibility tailored to the hospitality industry, sort of picking up on what we've been learning of our activities at the festival and expanding on that. And I went over, had my teaching assistant sort of go back through the records and see if we could add up what we'd accomplished over a few years, and it was pretty astonishing to me. We'd served over 50,000 meals at the different shelters in the South Florida area. And as well, we'd recovered over 1 million pounds of food in different rescue efforts, working with Feeding South Florida, Second Harvest of Central Florida Farm Share, even going out to Las Vegas. We've had a couple of trips out to Las Vegas. South Florida Hunger Coalition is another partner, also Food Rescue US. So we've really branched out and started working with a lot of different partners here. And this is a great education for our students who are very shortly going to be managers of restaurants, catering managers, venue managers, hotel meeting managers, working on cruise lines, and throughout the hospitality industry. They have an opportunity to take what they learned at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival in recovering food and apply that into new situations in their careers. Besides the festival, which is just in February, the rest of the year we're pretty active too. And so we're out there at the food banks helping them sort through the donations. We are serving at the homeless shelters, as I pointed out. In fact, on the right is Camilla's house. The food service manager there now is a graduate of our program, got his master's degree from here. So we're rather proud of that too. And just working with the many organizations that are out there fighting the good fight and finding ways to help them in their missions. Getting involved also in the weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, almost daily during COVID, community food distributions. And then another one sometimes people aren't aware of are these huge food industry shows. These are enormous. The amounts of food that flow through these, the Produce Marketing Association, and of course all of the suppliers to the hotel industry are out there marketing their foods. And when they're at a convention center with these enormous quantities on display, they've been out all day on display. They're not taking them back and reselling them. So they're very happy to donate those. We've also learned how to cooperate with different people in the meeting planning business. Joanna, you'll recognize some of these things. Working with event planners in creating components of an overall program that can emphasize sustainability or corporate social responsibility. So we get in touch with people in Joanna's world and say, if you'd like us to come in and help with an event, we'd be delighted to. It's great education for our kids. It's a great education for the people in the industry. And it's a win-win because all of that gets donated in due course. We've been successful here too in getting all of our faculty and staff engaged. It's sort of kind of taken over the chaplain school now. So we're out there and they're mixing it up with the students and with the community. I wanted to pick up on a little bit of what was mentioned earlier about other ways of food diversion. So yeah, it's second on the list is to get the food to people who can enjoy it. But then with all of the table scraps and all of the other foods that you can't, we can compost, and there are other things you can do in the way of digesters. But I wanted to mention composting. We don't have a digester on campus, so I can't get into that. But we've recently been developing gardens with composting facilities at both of our campuses here, both in North Miami Beach and at our main Medique campus. And so this is our living laboratory. It's a collaborative effort with our College of Arts, Sciences, and Education. They have an agroecology department. They have an earth and environment department. We're working very closely with them and trying to contribute from our side as hospitality people and learn at the same time. We have a large nature preserve down on our main campus, down past Miami Airport, if you've been out that way. And they've just recently started up a composting area there as part of the nature preserve. And the beginnings of this is to work with our on-campus catering, Chartwell's catering service. So they actively wanted to work with us and have a channel of how to deal with the waste. So we've got 2 clubs now working, student clubs working with us, with myself and Chef Massey, who you'll meet in a little bit. One is sustainability, and they're working here with this area, and the other is Panther Chow, which is working more on picking up the edible foods from our cafeteria and some of the other outlets. I think there was a question or a comment earlier about food pantries. We recognize that there's an issue on our campus, on both of our campuses, and we've learned nationwide that we're not unusual in that students are often, really trying to get that degree, but struggling to make ends meet. And so a few years ago, matter of fact, our dietitians came up with this idea of establishing student food pantries on both campuses. So now a student who is in need can go to either one of the pantries and pick up 10 pounds of food and keep up their studies that way. Some other areas that we're able to work with our food and beverage partners, the Chartwell's on-campus catering, Panther Dining, Panther Chow I mentioned, and also at the end of every semester, you buy a meal plan, you've got leftover credit on your meal plan, worked out a donation program so that the unused portions of the meal plans can be reused by students in need. So with that, Ray, I think we're getting ready for questions and answers.
Yes. What I'd like to do, since we've offered all of the participants on this webinar that we will have the speakers answer their questions, I thought maybe a good wrap up at this time would be for the speakers who may have some other comments that they would like to make. It's been a fantastic program in terms of information dissemination, and I hope the participants in the webinar will take advantage of contacting each of you. But I'd like to take the last few minutes here and see if anybody has got some, any speakers have some comments to that they didn't get to during their formal presentation that they would like to make at this time. Anybody?
I wanted to jump in on a question I saw regarding, can cruise ships donate food? And John, not to put you on the spot, but what do you, I consider this one of our questions, industry. What do you know with respect to cruise food donation? Because the cruise industry will come back as one of the biggest industries down here in South Florida.
Sure, and here in South Florida, of course, the cruise ships are leaving territorial waters, and we cannot import food without going through a rigorous inspection process. So we're not recovering from ships coming back into port as far as I'm aware, and I'm certainly not the expert on that. If they're staying in territorial waters, then yes, or river cruise ships or something like that. But of course, there are islands that they visit that they could donate to, depending on the local laws. So that's something that the cruise industry, I'm sure, is looking into island by island and other ports of call. Another interesting twist this year with the pandemic is that I don't know if you've gone on a cruise ship and seen when they're onboarding all of the supplies, the enormous volumes, truckloads, semi-trailers of supplies that are going into the ship as you're going in as a happy passenger. Well, that's so that you can enjoy those midnight buffets, all 4,000 of you on the ship, without having to replenish the ship within a certain amount of time. Well, guess what happened when COVID hit and the ship stopped? That supply chain, that takes a long time to ramp up and move in certain directions so that those enormous supplies arrive at the port on time. All of a sudden, those trucks had to stop, and they're refrigerated and they're full of food, and they have to find homes. So some of us on this call probably remember getting those frantic calls.
Yes.
We have, a trailer load of this. We have a truckload of that. Help! Where can we take it? And I think most of the people involved in this program today experience something like that.
Hello. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Unmute. All right.
Hi.
All right.
Hi. So my name is Vanessa. I am a student at FIU, and I've written this in the chat, but I just wanted to reiterate it in case anybody missed it. So I actually work with a nonprofit called Buddy System, and recently we've taken on the project to bring community fridges to Miami-Dade, and we've established 2 so far. There's one in Overtown and one in Richmond Heights. And besides supporting the community with food support, one of our goals is to also fight food waste. And so anyone can take from the fridge, and folks are also encouraged to donate. I've website link in the chat so you can check it out. Also, we have an Instagram. And then also, sorry, I have like a few announcements. I'm like really excited about this. But there's this another nonprofit called Back to Earth. And this is great for folks that want to compost but can't do it at home. They provide a service. Well, they'll provide you with a bucket and they'll do a weekly pickup. And they also have sites across Miami, and you're able to drop off your compost there. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you for having this webinar, by the way. It's really informative.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Well, fantastic information from everybody. If there's a way to give a round of socially distant applause, I'd like to find it and applaud all of our speakers today. They've just been fantastic. And we're going to move on with the next session of this webinar, which is a Sustainable Thanksgiving Cooking webinar that Dr. John Bushman and Chef Massey will lead. I hope everybody will stick around for it. Thanksgiving is next week. I'm sure they'll have some great tips for everybody that's interested to have a more sustainable Thanksgiving dinner. And so with that, we will close this webinar. I'll repeat one more time that this webinar is being recorded, and any questions that the 100+ participants have that participated will be answered by our speakers. We will send all the questions that you've made online in the chat room to the appropriate speaker. And with that, I will let you go.
Great.
John.
Great. John, with your permission, I'm going to go and see if the chef is ready.
Okay.
And I'm in my 3rd floor office, so I've got to mask up, and then I'll head down to the kitchens and we'll be back with you.
All right. So everybody that's interested, just stick around. Thank you.
Hey, Chef.
Hey, John, how we doing? Dr. Bushman?
So are we ready to do this?
I'm ready to go when you
There
are.
we go. Like everybody, meet Chef John Noble Massey. He's our Director of Culinary and Industry Consulting here at the Chaplain School of Hospitality Tourism Management. He's got some great ideas cooked up, and I just want to turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bushman, and thank you all for joining us today. Couldn't be happier to be joining you. This is a great time of year to be thankful for a lot of things, and when we think about Thanksgiving, you know, normally it's the big sit-down family dinner with everybody coming in from out of town. That's going to be a little bit different this year. The guidelines, and we want to be very aware of those guidelines and make sure that maybe we're trying to do things smaller, so that way we can have a healthy and safe Thanksgiving the following year. So we've got a small turkey here that we roasted off. I'm going to share with you some of the tips that I do, because if it's going to be a smaller Thanksgiving and you're just cooking for maybe your immediate family, the family that's in your household, then you still want to figure out what you do with all those leftovers. And so that's very important to me. It's very important to Dr. Bushman. We try to teach that here at the Chaplain School, so it actually flows throughout all of our culinary classes and making sure that the students are utilizing waste. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, we've got some vegetables here. that the students left from a week or so ago. You can see they're kind of half cut. They are not rotten, but this carrot is not supposed to bend like that. I've washed these all in advance, and we're going to put them. I've got another pot of just cold water on the stove here. I'm going to get those into that pot, just going to cut them up, and those will be part of our turkey stock. So from the carcass that we have left after we remove all of the meat, we will prepare a turkey stock. Traditionally, maybe my mom or your mom just used to put the whole chicken or the whole turkey in the pot, cook it with vegetables, and then pull that out and pull the meat off. You can do this with a roast turkey. You can do this with a roast chicken. The key vegetables that you want to use are onions, carrots, and celery. And typically, because you're going to be removing them after you cook this stock for a little while, it doesn't matter how you cut them up. And so I like to cut them up into bigger chunks. So I'm going to have my onions. I don't use the peel of the onion. I use, because that's kind of bitter. If you were to think about anything that you're going to use in food, and I'm going to put that here in the skin, I'm going to put that here in my waste bucket, which we'll use for composting. We have a composting bin here on campus that we work in partnership with, and I'll ask John to show us the. Yes, thank you. See, that was a good cue, wasn't it?
Would you like this over here?
Yes, thank you. Everything in its right place. That's what the French call mise en place. So I'll put all of my composting in here. So it's an easy transfer. So that way we've got that front and center. Very good. And so, like I was saying, so the bitter skin, anything that you would not eat. So you wouldn't necessarily eat the skin here. And so that's why I don't want that to make my stock, which will eventually be a soup or a sauce, don't want to make that bitter. But it's perfectly wonderful for composting.
And once you get that skin off, that onion looks just as fresh as one that you bought yesterday.
You know, that's it. We do try to make sure that we're using, the best possible ingredients. And even if this is like this outer layer here, yeah. I'm still gonna, that's still good for composting. There, so we've got our onion set. I'm gonna cut this up as well. And like I said, we're just gonna cut that in large dices. One of the keys is always to have a sharp knife. So make sure you have a sharp knife at home. Sharp knife is less likely to give you an accident or a cut than a dull knife because you use less effort to do so. I'm going to put all of this into my pot. You start with cold water, and cold water draws more of the flavors out. Typically, you would cook a stock like this for about 4 or 6 hours. I'm going to cut up my carrots. And here, I am going to use those ends. So I don't cut off the ends, or I don't peel a carrot. Typically, what you may want to do is, if you have vegetable waste at home, if you peel your carrots at home, for me, I actually just scrub my carrots down with a little bit of a brush and wash them. I don't peel them. But if you do peel your carrots, then maybe you save those ends in that. I actually put them in the freezer. The freezer is my best friend when it comes to reducing waste. And here you see on this celery, this is a bad part. This has gotten a little bit rotten here on the end. So I don't want to use that in my stock. If you use rotten stuff, it will taste rotten. But that's perfectly good for composting. And I want to do a little quality check here on the rest, and that is good. If it's a little bit brown on the end, I want to take that off. And the rest, if it's a little bit wilted, is fine. And again, these large dices, and that will go into my stock. And then the last little piece here, I love parsley and I love using fresh herbs. The stems you try to find something to do with, and with the stems, I'll just cut the ends off and put the stems in so I get a little bit of parsley flavor without using the beautiful leaves. I'm going to pick through these. I'll compost the parsley that's a little bit past its prime. Past its prime is a good term. So that will compost that, and we'll use the really fresh, beautiful green parsley for our garnishing in the kitchen. So let's see. I also have spices. I'm going to use bay leaf, thyme, and a little bit of fresh ground black pepper. The one thing that I don't put in my stock is salt. Everyone's trying to reduce a little bit of salt, and I can always add salt in at the end. I can't take it away, so I'll always add it at the end. Notice I've got two different cutting boards. Here we try to, you probably don't have them at home, but it's important to rinse your cutting boards and sanitize them when you're going from a vegetable to a meat, regardless of whether that's cooked. So.
Or vice versa.
And vice versa. Thank you, John. So we've got these beautiful vegetables here, and all of this roast. So we roast our turkey on a bed of vegetables. That helps give us this extra stock. And all of this here that you see is this extra gelatin we're going to put into the stock along with our carcass. I'm going to break the turkey down and put that here on our platter. So the first thing that I do is remove these wing tips. I want to cut the first wing tip off. Because no one's eating that. Typically, people don't eat that. And that's going to go right into my stock pot.
Not into the composting bin.
Yep, not into the composting. We never want to compost meat or meat products.
Or bones, or, yeah.
Bones. They can be ground up and used in animal feed.
Good point.
Which is a great use. My turkey wings, this is a second wing joint. I'll typically just leave that there for someone to snack on. And then I'm going to remove the first wing joint, which is the closest to the chicken, or the turkey in this case. And I'm going to do the same thing. So if I set up my platter at home, this is exactly what I'll do at home. The key is finding other uses for the turkey. And so I'll typically display the whole turkey on my platter like this. And then whatever is left over, then you got to figure out what you want to do with that product. Some chefs now are saying that you can actually do what I'm going to do. And this is the breast portion, here are the leg and thighs, and actually separate those two. They actually cook a little bit differently. The legs and thighs, because they have a little bit of extra meat and they're a little bit closer to the cavity, it takes a little bit longer for those to cook. So sometimes people will actually separate this. For this product, I want to start to, depending on whether or not you like your skin or not, then I can either put that on or pull that off. In this case, I'm going to pull it off. I like the skin on the breast portion. And I'm going to put that over here. And that's going to go into the stock as well. You can separate your legs. And then the different things that you want to use for your leftover meat. Usually, I'm going to just start with your hands and start to pull as large a piece as you can off of the thigh, so that way people get a little bit of nice portions of the thigh meat. There's one large bone in the thigh. That would be called the thigh bone, right? And so the rest of the meat around that is really, really good. and I'm left with the bones here. I'm going to add that to my vegetables here. I'm going to go on the other side, pull off the skin. So John, what other things do you think we could make with the leftover turkey that we have here?
Oh my gosh, haven't we all been there before with sandwiches and soups and?
Yep, the sandwiches are the easy part.
Right.
The soup is going to be the best. My favorite part
Yeah.
is the soup. So
I agree.
after this cooks for about 4 hours, we're gonna strain that. If we want, we can sift out the vegetables and compost those, or actually sometimes I'll grind those, put those in a blender with another, like a broccoli. I'll cook off some broccoli and make that a broccoli soup. So it'd be broccoli vegetable soup. Certainly wouldn't be vegetarian because I have the
Right.
turkey broth there, but it's a great way to utilize those vegetables without them going in the garbage can. So right now I'm just continuing to pull the dark meat off of the carcass. You mentioned the soup, so we could do just a plain turkey soup and cut up some of the meat with some vegetables and make that a broth. So this is the cleaned back, and then we've got the legs here. So I want to do the same thing with the legs.
Yeah, so in our household, we normally will have a pretty big group, and we'll use most of that. We'll have enough leftovers for another day or two, but that's about it. But this year, we're gonna be very lean at home,
Yep.
and, but we're still gonna cook a full-size bird. In fact, I bought 2 birds,
Oh, wow.
and we're going to have one just to take down to the Miami Rescue Mission for a donation,
That's wonderful.
alongside of the additional leftovers that we think we're gonna have this year. So that's something people can consider doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There is a very, very large food insecure population here in Miami and many other parts of the state of Florida.
And here at the school too, we have ownership of our FIU school food pantry this month, and it's the perfect month to have it because we're taking both food donations
Right.
and monetary donations via a link.
We do
I'm not
this
sure if
every
we-
year, that we take charge of finding resources, foods, and funding for the student food pantry on campus. About 6, 7 years ago, I was invited to a committee where we were looking at this surge of food insecurity among students. It was something that people didn't think about before. We always, sort of joke about the college student who's living on ramen noodles. without
Indeed
thinking
they are.
how difficult that can be to maintain a healthy studying lifestyle on just ramen noodles. And so our dietitians realized this, did a study, and found that there's a large population on this campus, and they also found out that it's true on many other campuses around the country, that it's pretty common. So we started the student food pantry, I want to say about 6 years ago. And different departments on campus, different colleges of this and that will take a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we keep it supplied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's excellent. I'm glad that, I'm so glad that we're part of that. And that's a wonderful idea that you're leading the charge with that.
Yeah. Now there we do not take the fresh products. Those are all going to be shelf-stable products.
Sure.
And so now what we're going to do with this then is take it to the Miami Rescue Mission for the turkey, and then the composting will take it down to our compost facility on the main campus.
That's wonderful. I mean, and we've got student volunteers to help with that, right?
Right.
So, last part of the turkey is I really love the turkey breast and using it for sandwiches, as Dr. Bushman mentioned. There's a keel bone here, and notice I'm breaking the whole turkey down. I want to go to one side of that keel bone and just follow it along the side and make sure that I'm trying to keep as much of the meat onto this breast portion as I possibly can, taking the knife and running it along that rib cage. So that way I can get really nice turkey sandwiches. And there's that. And there's an extra piece there. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So some other things that we can make. The soup and the sandwiches are typically the best things and the things, obviously things that people do.
Yeah.
But what I love to do, both with turkey and with any roast chicken that I have, is add some Greek yogurt and make turkey salad sandwiches.
Uh-huh.
Add some a little bit of onion and celery, and then make the sandwiches that way. Keep in mind there's the wishbone here, and if you run your fingers down either side of that wishbone, you'll get additional nice white meat here. And then you can give the wishbone to the kids to fight over. And so there's your wishbone for the kids. This is actually pretty clean. So we're going to put that here. I'm going to just really quick. I always try to have my skins look nice and clean, and so I want to do the same. And we've got these two beautiful breasts here, and I'm just going to cut those up in slices. So the turkey salad sandwich I mentioned, you can do Asian stir fries, which are wonderful. You can use the turkey in a pasta dish. I love doing stir-fried rice dishes.
We do that at my house as well.
Lots of vegetables. And so typically, if you look at the turkey breast, much like a chicken, and you've got the two legs, the two thighs, the two wings, and the two breast portions, you can get, at least, if you're going to eat the breasts whole rather than put them into a sandwich or a stir fry, then that counts as like one portion. But if you put those same chicken breasts, if you, again, translating this to a chicken, you can use half the amount of meat by putting those into a stir fry or a pasta dish and just getting that little bit of meat and making the balance be vegetables or starch. So I'll typically always present my turkey actually like that at the table. I'll bring the roast turkey out of the oven, then I'll carve it in the kitchen, take that 10 minutes to do what I just did, so that way it's easier for guests. The other thing that you want to do this year in particular is to make sure that you aren't having multiple people handle things. So if you have one person serve plates in like a buffet line, that's a great way to make sure that they're being safe and sanitary.
Yeah, using, like for example, the smaller plates that you're using for the vegetables now. Another advantage to doing that way is you can keep some in the warmer. And so as your event progresses, you
Yes.
don't have everything else on the table getting cold.
Yes, you can absolutely do that. So the last thing, I'm going to put all of my carcass. We did have the giblet pack in here. Usually you want to reserve that. Some people like a giblet gravy, and you can set that aside for a gravy. I typically don't put that in my stock. And then I'm going to put the rest of this, all of this, into my stock pot, and this is going to cook for 4 hours. And then I'll have John come back and I'll separate the vegetables for the composting, as we mentioned, and I'll use that delicious stock for some soup or some sauces.
Okay.
So that's what I got.
All right, so now let's see. Let me come back there with you.
Yep, let me.
Now you have the, I see you have the aluminum cans already out.
Yep.
So what we determine later then is left over and has not been contaminated, we can package up like this.
Yep.
And then I or some of our students from one of our 2 clubs,
Yes.
we're faculty advisors to a couple of student clubs.
Yes.
We'll take
Hi,
these-
everyone in the Sustainability Club.
Exactly, Panther Chow, go Panther Chow. We'll take it down to maybe Joshua's Heart over here in North Miami, Miami Rescue Mission, down in Wynwood, Broward Outreach Center up in Hollywood, depending on, what's the convenient way on the way home that you can drop these things off.
Yeah.
Always sealed in a container like this to preserve them. And again, as Chef pointed out, with avoiding multiple hands on the food if you're going to.
Yep, very much so.
Right, especially if you know you're going to donate. The composting then, you've already put some of that in here.
Yep, I'll fill that up with the rest of my sort through the parsley and some of the other things that we have left over in the kitchen today.
All right, and then we'll also have some students down at the compost facility taking care of those.
Excellent.
All right? Well, Chef, this is fantastic.
Awesome. Always.
I learned a lot.
Well, I hope so. I hope everyone out there, if you pick up 1 or 2 tips from today, then wonderful. That's the idea. So everyone, please, we'll take your questions as we go back into the restaurant management lab.
Right, we'll go over there.
Happy to take your questions, and everyone have a safe and healthy holiday.
And sustainable.
And sustainable. Thank you,
Holiday.
John.
All right. We'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit.
Hey, Erica, Green Team, how y'all doing? Good to see you. So Chef Massey is just finished a demo up at BBC in our kitchens, and this is for the Department of Environmental Protection. And he's showing everybody how to do a sustainable Thanksgiving dinner. And so he's broken down the turkey, and I'm taking the turkey leftovers over to the rescue mission. He told me to bring the trimmings of all the vegetables, all the organic stuff down here. That apparently you've got new composting stalls, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so and you're part of the Office of Sustainability, the Green Team, and we're at the Nature Preserve on the main campus, the Medique campus, and this is a new cooperation that we're just starting because they're just getting this compost facility up and running. So we're looking for great things here in the future. And there you are.
Thank you very
Do
much.
what you do.
Let's go.
So I'm here with my friend Chef Ivor at the Miami Rescue Mission. He's the head of food service here. And bringing in all the turkey trimmings that just as Chef asked me to do. We're donating that to the mission, as we do very often. And I'm sure you have a few people who are going to enjoy that.
Thank you.
You serve about,
This year we expect to serve about 500 to 600.
about 500 to 600 people for the Thanksgiving dinner. All right, so it's not much, but every little bit helps.
Yes.
So thank you. Okay, that was a quick trip.
Wow, John, you made it back here in record time.
All right, well, I did my deliveries and got back here real quick so we could answer any questions that you may have for the chef. So please type them in the chat if you have questions, or I'm not sure we'll be able to hear you if we pick you up on the mic. Any questions for Chef Massey about the Sustainable Thanksgiving presentation?
Well, if I were to ask a question, John, what would it be? What would a question that you would be? What can you do with the stock?
What did I just
Thank you.
ask you like 2 minutes ago, right?
You know, Dr. Bushman did ask me that question, Eugene. So we've got the stock going on in the back. We actually served some of that turkey to our students for family meal. We're actually running our advanced food production class today. So I made a gravy. One of our students had not made gravy, so we thickened that stock up that had been cooking for a couple hours, added some seasoning. You can thicken it with a cornstarch and water, what they call a cornstarch slurry. Just make sure that is added and stirred up. and then adjust the seasoning, serve it over the turkey. My favorite use for stocks is making soups. So I love using that as a base, vegetables, a little bit of, just a little bit of protein. Soups are a great way to utilize vegetables and minimize the amount of meat protein that you have. So anything that we can do, one of the broad recommendations I have for all students, I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but I have tried to shift my diet that way. And if every person shifts their diet a little bit to consume less meat, that is significantly more sustainable. So by offering soups and using that stock in a soup, that's what I do primarily.
It's interesting you mentioned about your going a little bit vegan, but not fully vegan. All my students in my social responsibility class, we have weekly challenges. And 1 week they need to live off SNAP benefits and figure out how to make a menu. But 1 week they also go vegan. And that gets really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to change your lifestyle. I'm asking you to understand how other people have.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And little by little, I get students come back to me and say, you know what? Because of your class, I have changed.
Excellent. Joanna, good to see you and good to hear you, Joanna. And appreciate the feedback. Thoughts on creative use for leftover stuffing, sweet potatoes, and cranberry sauce. I love using sweet potatoes not only in savory dishes, but also in sweet dishes. If you get some stale bread, the sweet potatoes, a little bit of maple syrup, an egg custard, the same bread pudding recipe that you'd have for a traditional bread pudding. Bread pudding is a great vehicle for any leftovers, and you can make it savory or sweet. And I love making it sweet with the sweet potatoes, a little bit of maple syrup. You could add some nuts in there, walnuts, cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce, for me, I love to make, we've got students that are making, in our fully operational restaurant, we have students that are doing both front of house service and back of the house cooking. They're behind the bar making mocktails. And I would love to use some of that cranberry sauce as a base for a mocktail, a seasonal mocktail. In South Florida, you know, you don't really feel the seasons as much. And so the best way to feel those seasons is by using seasonal foods in your menus. And so I've got a pumpkin soup on the menu, a cranberry cocktail, mocktail would be awesome. And that's what I'd use the cranberry sauce for. Leftover stuffing, I wouldn't turn that into anything else. I really love leftover stuffing.
You know, we do something here with bread that I don't think you can do at home. Because we have the brew.
Oh, yeah.
Our students learn how to make beer, and there is an leftover product of spent grains, right?
Yes.
And our team has figured out a way to make a fantastic bread out of those spent grains, so they can be reused. They're used once in the beer making process. Yeah. Again to make the bread. And when you have that leftover bread, you can make things like stuffing, bruschettas. What else can you do? I mean, it's creativity.
It's really interesting. We hear different stories, and mostly the stories that I hear are in the back house. But I also hear them from some of the breweries, and certainly Dr. Bushman mentioned the spent grain. Funky Buddha Brewery in Fort Lauderdale actually made a interesting beer. They brewed that beer with fresh oysters. So they used both the shells and the oysters themselves. Then they kept the oysters that were cooked after the beer had been brewed, tossed them in some butter, and served them out of a food truck that they had. So really interesting double use of that.
We have a question from Ian. In my household, I'm not the cook, I'm the dishwasher. I want to reduce food waste. What would be a great way to get others to reduce their own waste? Bring them on board with these practices. You know,
I started to allude to it in my presentation earlier. The freezer is really your best friend. And I use it for a lot of things. A handful of things, like if I have vegetable scraps, you saw that the vegetable scraps went into the stock. You can save those vegetable scraps in a Tupperware or a Ziploc bag, keep them in the freezer, and when you have enough of them, then make a stock. I do the same thing with any carcass from a chicken or a roast chicken that I have. I also love, and by happenstance, I went to Publix and they didn't have fresh basil in the package. And they said, oh, but we do have a fresh basil plant. And I may kill every other plant in my yard, but a fresh basil plant I'll keep alive in my kitchen, and I pull from that anytime I need it. And so the more self-reliant we can be with those kind of things, certainly. Any other tips from you?
Well, Miami-Dade
Yeah.
County's got a great app, and the name is escaping me right now, but they've developed a great app that you can use at home for exactly the processes that Jeff is talking about. So you might want to look that up and see if that'll help you at home as well.
I recommend just, it's a big task and starting in small steps. That first small step may be to go out and purchase that basil plant. That first step may be to plan your meal for a week, so that way you know exactly what you're going to make. It will actually save you money as well. For those that are on a tighter budget, if you plan your meals out ahead and you're going to do this and your portions as well, those kind of things really help. And they help is one of the things that we try to do here in the Chaplain School. One of the students' assignments is, how do we reduce food costs? And many of the ideas that the students had for the restaurant were to reduce waste.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes back to the source. In the EPA hierarchy, reduce at the source is your #1 goal.
Yeah.
Number 2 is donate the food that's edible. Number 3, then we get into these other diversion opportunities. So we keep all of those in mind, and absolutely last, ultra last resort is let it go into the landfill.
Yeah.
Try never to do that. If there are no more questions, we want to thank you for being a wonderful audience today.
Appreciate it.
I believe that our organizers are going to circulate a list of all of the presenters with our emails and phone numbers, so feel free to reach out to any of us. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to get back to you and continue to collaborate and share great information. I'll bet you've got information that we could use too. So thank you all. You've been great.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
John. This is Ray. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ray. There are a lot to be thankful for.